Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Bruce?
Lionel?
Bruce?
Lionel?
You know what? I'm really bugged because I've been finding out lately. Now, this is a long time ago now, although he's probably gotten a truckload of stuff and more stuff. But I introduced Spoon to two people. I introduced him to Serge Labelle in Septiel, Quebec.
Yes.
Serge is a locomotive engineer for the Quebec North Shore and Labrador.
Yes.
And I introduced him to Scott Lister, who lives in, don't tell me, Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay.
Was it Greenville? Let me look on the big map and see. It's down the road from Asheville.
It's Greenville.
It's Greenville. Anyways, I introduced Spoon to both of these guys, and they keep sending him presents.
Nice.
Well, yeah, but I introduced him.
Yeah, but you're not a locomotive engineer, so you're not like in the fraternity.
Well, Scott Lister isn't a locomotive engineer.
Oh, isn't he?
He's just a guy.
Oh, well, there you go.
He's a car guy.
Huh.
But these guys, everybody keeps sending Spoon because Spoon is everybody's favorite.
Uh-oh. And this makes you sad?
You know, Spoon is everybody's favorite.
Yeah, but does it make you sad? And does it make you feel inadequate?
It makes me feel
unloved and unwanted. You know, express your feelings to us. We're here to help.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? You know what it does, Bruce? It makes me glad that I was able to introduce Spoon to the world.
There you go. That in itself should be a great feat of happiness to you.
Yes.
We all know a world without Spoon would be no fun at all.
And most mornings you can find me skipping down the street because I've introduced Spoon to the world.
I seen that one time and I thought, what the hell? Oh, well, no, it's just Lionel skipping down the road.
Yeah.
May I please interject for a second?
Go ahead.
Absolutely.
How many free meals have you gotten?
From you?
From anybody.
Your point being?
Yeah, your point being.
I'm just saying.
Was that because of a podcast you started?
No.
That's something to do, something completely unrelated.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever gotten a free meal from Spoon, and I've got maybe upwards of 20 from Bruce.
Yeah, the closest you got to free meal at Spoon is when he cooked burgers and sausages at the barbecue last year.
I damn near died doing that.
Yeah.
You did too.
Yeah. You were a sweaty little guy.
Hey, I don't see that getting any better.
And you know what, Bruce? I keep track of how many times people get me. Lionel gets a free meal. We play that game. Lionel gets a free meal. It's a great game. People all over the world like to play. But you know what, Bruce?
Yes, go ahead.
You're up to. I haven't got the result. I haven't got the standings right in front of me, but I know you are solidly ahead of most of the pack, except you're still in second place.
Yes, and I always will be.
He's the leader going into the clubhouse.
He's the leader going into the clubhouse, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so tonight this is another episode. I'm going to have an episode, and tonight I especially invited Spoon to join us because the fellow we're going to interview is Norm Skretting. I hope I get that right.
It's Skretting.
Yeah, I'm not talking to you, Norm. Norm, go back into the green room. Attaboy. Norm, did you talk to Rob about this? Did he give you the sheet of instructions for how to do this?
No.
No.
Well, there we go.
There you go. How many podcasts how many Modelers Life podcasts have you listened to?
About 3.
Well, okay. Anyways, Norm, just we're going to introduce you. Did you ever watch the Johnny Carson show?
Uh-huh.
Well, this is exactly like the Johnny Carson show. We come out and do a monologue. We warm up the crowd for you, and then we bring you out to sit on the couch.
I'll just be quiet.
Attaboy.
Attaboy, way to go.
How do you pronounce your name, Norm?
Skretting.
Skretting. How do you spell it?
Skretting.
Skretting.
TT.
ING.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think you're pronouncing your name right. Is it Norm? Is it Norm?
Norman, yeah. It's
Norman. This is going to be
Norman, yeah.
This is going to be a long night. Thanks, Rob.
No,
Thanks, Rob.
that's okay. I'm Norwegian, so that's what happens.
Are you?
Well, Norwegian descent. I was born in Canada.
Yeah. So are you first generation or second generation Canadian?
Second.
So your parents were born in Canada too?
My mother was. My father was born in Norway, but he was 3 months when they moved to Canada.
Yeah. Norm, you're Canadian. Okay, just leave it at that.
Yeah, that works for me.
Do you have a hockey stick in the garage?
No, but it's down in the basement.
There you go. Now that sticks, Bruce. That sticks with my theory that no matter where you go in Canada, you walk into any house, there's a hockey stick in there somewhere.
At least one somewhere. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Spoon, how's it going?
Oh, just great.
Hey, Spoon, are you getting like fabulous gifts in the mail and stuff?
Yeah,
I am. Yeah. I'm getting absolutely stupendous gifts in the mail. Yes.
Wow. Care to share with us what they might be?
Okay. Well, when we were interviewed Serge, he had on his Facebook page, I believe it was, he had this gorgeous bulkhead flat car, and that he made. He laser cut it, and all I did was say, "Wow, we need something like that in S." And next thing you know, he says, "Give me the dimensions for the bolster, and give me the dimensions for the screws, or for the trucks and the truck bolster and the sides of the screw. Just get those to me." Next thing you know, he printed some up.
Sweet.
And
so now you got some S-scale bulkhead flats.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then as far as Scott Lister goes, he is a fellow S-scaler, and he and I had started a dialogue together, and he's been following along with my locomotive project that I've been doing, my SW7 conversion, SW7 conversion. And he had told me that while we were talking, that I was mentioning that I'm having a hard time finding the proper headlights, and he just happened to have a buddy of his that had some drawings, and so he found the drawings, or his friend designed a headlight, and they 3D printed them and sent some headlight castings to me.
Sweet.
So nothing major, but just very much, very, very much appreciated stuff. It's been kind of exciting. So now I'm looking forward to getting the engine done for sure.
That engine's looking good too.
Thank you. It's I'd say it's a labor of love, but right now it's just the plain old labor.
just a labor PITAs.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where I want it off my workbench. So
haven't you been working on it for a while though?
Yeah, several months. Yeah, I've been making YouTube videos and stuff like that of it. And it's taken quite a while, and that's okay. I work on it a little bit, and every week or so, and every couple of weeks I put out a video on my progress, and that's about it.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
It's my name, Michael Ostertag, Ostertag. Okay.
And how do you pronounce it? It's not Norm?
No, it's not pronounced Norm. And it is pronounced Michael, though.
Okay. So come on in here, Norm. Come on into the studio now that you're already here.
Sure.
How do you think it's going so far, Norm?
It's wonderful.
Yeah?
At least I know somebody models S-scale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, there's apparently 2 guys. Well, there's 3 guys now. We know of 4. We know of Mike. I gotta introduce everybody, but we know of Mike, the Spoon, Ostertag. We know of Bob Frischella. Does Bob have a nickname yet, Mike?
No, it's Bob.
Okay. And we know of Scott Lester in Greenville, South Carolina. Bob is in the Boston area. And then we know Ken Ziska, too.
And then SN3, Adam Pinellas. Models SN3.
Yeah, well, he's just talking right now. I think he's doing, isn't he doing HON3 now?
He's, I don't know, pick a scale and he's doing it.
Yeah, right at this minute, I think he's doing 7.5-inch gauge.
Yeah.
Which is some form of narrow gauge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of stuff on his workbench, but he is switched over to HON3, and he's going to be selling all his N scale stuff.
Like a bear, like on a bear on a mini scooter.
Right.
There you go.
Okay, Norm. So whereabouts are you from?
I live in Alberta in Canada, just about an hour southeast of Edmonton.
Oh, you're south of Edmonton. You're that far south of Edmonton, are you?
Yeah, it's from Rob's place to my place is about an hour and 10 minutes.
And the Rob we speak of is Rob Arsenault, who's been on the podcast several times, and he has weathermytrains.com.
That's correct.
Speaks very highly of you.
Well, he's very kind.
Are you in Red Deer?
No, it's near Camrose.
Okay.
Which is about halfway between Edmonton and Red Deer.
Yeah, on Highway 13.
Highway 13, right. We actually live just off Highway 21 south of Camrose.
Okay. So Edmonton is one of the two major cities in Alberta. Alberta is one of the provinces of Canada. So now, why did Rob want me to talk to you? Do you know?
Well, he thinks I have some interesting stories, I guess, and I worked for Canadian National for 22 years as a operator, train dispatcher, assistant chief train dispatcher, and I worked 3 summers also on gangs while I was going to university.
Okay, so and is there anywhere on the internet that we can find your railroad?
On YouTube, it's called Norman CN Clearwater Sub.
Norman CN Clearwater Sub.
Correct.
So, can you repeat those jobs again? You worked on a gang as a kid going to school.
Right. I worked 1972 as it was on a concrete gang in British Columbia in the Fraser Canyon.
Right.
That was actually, I took a semester or term off university, so that was the fall of 72. And then in 74, in the spring, I worked on a gang as it was a surfacing gang around Camrose. And then in 1975, after I finished university, I worked on it's called a cable gang. We dumped ballast and air dumps and stuff. And we worked around Jasper up to Grand Cache, Grand Prairie, and over to Edson.
Wow. And
then I started as an operator in 1979 in Camrose. They trained a lot of operators there.
Is there a yard there? Or?
It is, yeah, there's a yard. There's a junction of many different subdivisions came in at Camrose or very close to Camrose. So it had all kinds of different traffic that came and went. It wasn't an assigned location normally for train crews. They came out of Edmonton, that all based out of there, or out of Hanna. They came up from Hanna with way freight traffic, grain and stock and things like that. So from Camrose, then I worked all over Alberta, Edson, Fort Saskatchewan, North Edmonton, Hanna, Mirror as an operator. And then in Edmonton as a hotbox and tracks operator, which is in the dispatching office. Those things are pretty well automated now, so those positions don't exist. And then I went dispatching in 1981. So I became a relief train dispatcher. 1983, I went to work in headquarters in Montreal for 4 months. We did a survey on dimensional loads across Canada on CN. And in 1986, I went to Motive Power Control in Montreal. I worked there for 1 year and then moved to technological development as the RTC advisor for the group. And we did things like TGBO, which train specific general bulletin orders, and CAMS, which was a computer assisted manual block system. So we installed manual block in Moncton, I guess, in the Moncton dispatching office when I was there. And then I moved back to Edmonton as an assistant chief train dispatcher and worked, that was in 1988 2008, I believe. I came back and worked there until they cut my job as a manager in 2001, and then I left took a buyout.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But currently I'm working part-time as a conductor for a short line railroad in Alberta called the Battle River Railway, and it runs from Forestburg Alliance area, which is southeast of Camrose, into Camrose and interchange with CN there. So, but
So I don't think there's really any more questions we need to ask him, is there, guys? We can pretty much call it.
I think you can kind of wrap it up and be out of here early.
If you'd like to get a hold of us,
Yeah.
Our email address.
our email address.
right.
So did I miss in there? You were never a locomotive engineer. You just did all these dispatching jobs and all these other cool jobs.
That is correct. I worked engineering 3 different summers, and then the rest of it was operator dispatcher in the dispatching office. Correct.
So why do they call it operator dispatcher? And can you just move your microphone maybe like a quarter of an inch away from your mouth there?
Yep. Is that better?
Sure. I think that was closer to 3/8, but that'll do.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, it was probably. It doesn't matter. Anyway,
hang on for a minute, Rob.
Sure.
Rob, after this, you're instructed to go up to Norm's house and make sure he listens to more of the podcast, because I'm not sure he's comfortable with us right now. I know Rob's listening, so I'm just telling him that. And get back to work, Rob. So okay. So all right. So but first, can we find out about your model? Like, have you been a model railroader your whole life?
Probably the first time I actually bought model railroad equipment would have been when I had a paper route in junior high school. So I was probably about 14 years old. My parents didn't have any money, so I had to find my own money to buy my stuff. So I started in HO, and I've always modeled in HO. So that would have been about 1967 or so.
Okay. So you're basically a lifelong model railroader.
Correct.
Do you remember why you were drawn to it? Like you say at 14, do you remember, like for me, I started when I was 5 when my dad put the train under the tree, but.
Yeah, we didn't have that, but we lived in a small town in southern Alberta. The train used to come, I really don't know, once a week is what it used to be. It was a CP line, and I was quite drawn to the whistle and the activity there. So that's where it started, apparently, according to what my mother used to tell me. And then when we moved to Edmonton, I would build my own equipment out of cardboard. So I'd make my cardboard trains and play with them. So my actual beginning with manufactured model railroad equipment was about when I was 14.
Okay, so all right, let me ask you this question. It's one of my favorite questions. I've asked Spoon this before, and Spoon, feel free to jump in. You're not sorry, Norm. Would you be classified as management when you were working for the railroad?
When I retired or when I took a buyout, yes.
Okay, Spoon, are you going to be able to talk to this guy?
Why not? He's retired. And not only that, but he was doing this when I was still in high school. So he's way removed from what we're doing now. Okay. Well, kind of, sort of.
Yeah. So Norm Spoon is a locomotive engineer for the Canadian National Railway in Manitowoc. Well, he's out of Green Bay, Bay, Wisconsin, home of the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. And so, so he's been out of Green Bay as pretty much your whole career, right, Spoon?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, for the most part. I'm working in Manitowoc right now, but we're off a Green Bay board, so
yeah, that's exactly. I was going to say something like that, off the Green Bay board or something like that.
Yeah,
look at me go with all that.
You,
yeah. So
at least,
go ahead, Norm. Go ahead, Norm.
At least you remembered where he worked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
I knew he was on the Green Bay board.
So, Norm, before we get into anything that Lionel wants to ask about me, is that line that you're working, is that part of the old Northern Alberta line? Or is that the other? Is that farther away from where you're at?
The NAR began in Edmonton, just off the CN main line in Edmonton, and it went north.
North. Okay.
Yeah. This
so
line.
You're the opposite direction then.
That's correct. We're southeast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the railroad you're working for now?
Battle River Railway.
Battle River Railway. And how'd you get hooked up with those guys? They were just looking for somebody, and you got all the experiences or something, or what?
Yeah, my brother actually he also worked for CN in the same office that I did, and he took a buyout and contracted originally with a railroad out of Leader, Saskatchewan. And then they started shipping crude oil on the Battle River Railway, and they needed somebody to look after this extra traffic. So he hired on there, and so I had a little bit of an in, I guess, to get hired. And unfortunately, about a year after I started, he died of a brain tumor. So he's no longer there, but that's 5 years ago here in June.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm looking on their map of the Battle River Railway, and it shows it as a straight line from Camrose to Alliance. Is that pretty much the way it is, just a straight line?
Almost. There's a CN portion that runs out 8.2 miles out of Camrose that CN still owns. It used to be called the Alliance sub.
Right.
Anyway, they own up to mile 8.2, and then they sold from 8.2 out to I think it's just about mile 60. Yeah. So, but from where we start to the end of the line is straight. There are 2 curves coming out of Camrose, and that's it. Other than going in and out of elevator tracks, there's no other curves.
That's a sharp paint scheme.
Yeah, the blue and yellow.
That's really sharp. I like the blue bell.
Yeah. As long as the bell works, I like it.
Right.
Yeah. But no, it's good. We actually have 2 XCN SD40-2Ws, the 5251 and the 5353. And we just this year bought a XCP 5951, which is an SD40-2. And we have an XSP unit, HLCX 4211, which is a GP40-2. And we have on lease from CN an old Dash 8 2103, which I think was an XUP unit. Not really sure. But it's one of the standard cab Dash 8s that CN bought about 3-4 years ago. Or more.
So, yeah. Do you? If there's any questions you don't want to answer, feel free not to answer them. But I will be really annoyed if you don't. This is a hard-hitting interview. You'll find out.
Yeah, I'm hurt.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you how old of a gentleman you are?
66.
Wow. Is it hard? Like being a conductor, part-time conductor, is that hard work, or is that not that?
It's excellent work. It's lots of exercise, climbing up and down cars, and lots of walking and tying on handbrakes and taking them off. So it's very good for somebody who's retired and wants to stay in shape.
Right. Okay. And so how many days a week would you work at that?
Depending on the month. Right now, things have slowed down. We have about 1,700 stored cars from various customers that use CN. But normally I work anywhere from 2 to 5 times a month. So It's not lots. Yep.
Right. Okay. So it's just enough to keep you interested and give you something to do and all that stuff.
And pays for my model railroading.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So how big is your layout? When did the layout you're at now? So you were moving around a bit, but I'm kind of getting a guess that those years that you were in Montreal and that time you were in Montreal, you maintained your home in Edmonton. Is that a guess, or?
Yes, I what did I do? Rented it out to my brother and sister-in-law, and then they bought their own place, and I rented it to somebody else. But I was only gone just under 2 years, so the layout was in the basement, unused for that time. And then we moved. I met my wife, I guess, in 1989. We got married in 1990, and we moved to Camrose, just outside of Camrose here in 1993. So the current layout, the one that you'll see, is I started building that about 1997.
Okay. And is how many layouts prior to this one had you built?
One, two in my parents' house in Camrose, and one in we bought an acreage after that, so I had a room in a shed that I built, and that yard that I built there was is currently on this layout here. It was, I forget how long it is, 14 feet, I believe.
Right.
So I moved it from Camrose up to Edmonton, and from Edmonton back down to here to this house, and I had to modify it. The room I have is not as long as the house I had in Edmonton, so I had took off a straight part and built a curved end to it.
Wow! And is there any place that anybody could see the track plan or on the internet or?
No, I haven't done the track plan. It's basically a big loop in 2 rooms. The main room is about 22 by 14,
right,
or 14 by 22, and the other room is an odd shaped room that has the staging yard in it, and it is about 12 by 12, I guess.
Okay.
So the layout goes through the wall twice, and it's just one large loop.
Yeah. And I'm looking at one of the videos now. I mean, it looks like it's beautifully done for sure. So you obviously, enjoy the hobby and the whole 9 yards is all that. Like, yeah.
I do. I was never a great art student when I was growing up, but I'm amazed what you can do with great rock molds and static grass and ground foam. So it turned out way better than I had hoped, and I'm quite happy with it.
Is the model railroading community in Edmonton pretty active, or?
Yes, there's one large club that has a layout at Fort Edmonton. And they had built a replica of a freight station, freight shed, and that's where their layout is. It's actually a 2-deck layout, and they just added on a portion to expand into, but they have run out of money because they can't have their fundraising got canceled this year. But it's a very good layout. And then there's also another club called La Baja, which has an HO scale layout and an N scale layout. And the fellow that does all the signaling and electronics for the La Baja layout, he owns a company called Signalogic Systems. His name is Kevin Rudko. And he's also the person who designed my signal system.
Okay, yeah, I talked to Kevin in Springfield this year.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Yeah, I interviewed him I was on the Springfield Interviews podcast, which I'm sure you listened to 2 or 3 times.
Oh, yeah. Also, he just did some videos with Bob Fallowfield for Trainmasters TV, I see.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, yes, he did.
There's a series of 4, and the 3rd one was just posted here, I think, in the last week.
Oh, cool! And and he's got that whole signaling system, which you've incorporated onto your layout.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Quick question for you, Norman.
Yes.
That BC Rail unit on your YouTube, is that a product by Rob?
It is. It's a Rapido-8, and Rob, that was, I think, the very first BCR one that he weathered.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Which
video is that, Bruce?
It's the banner at the top of his YouTube page.
I knew that. I was just testing you.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I have. Rob has been very good to me. He's weathered probably 30 of my locos and a good number of cars. I did a lot of my own car weathering prior to meeting Rob. So.
And how did you guys meet?
How did we meet?
I asked you first.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Was it on a blind date or?
No, I think it was through a CN engineer. His name is Kenny King.
I know.
And Ken brought him down to an operating session.
Okay.
So that's when I met Rob.
Don't you know?
Rob,
go ahead, Norm.
Sorry, Rob just loves dispatching, so that's his job when he comes here. So
yeah, it seems like he'd be yelling at everybody.
He can make some nice remarks. Yeah.
So let's. Do you know Ken King? Don't you,
Yes.
Bruce?
Yeah, I've met him a few times when I've been out there. He used to run Edmonton out to Jasper and back on CN.
Yeah, and he also worked. He started on the NAR.
Yes.
Yeah.
The NER, the Northern Alberta Railroad.
Northern Alberta Railway.
All right.
Yeah.
So, okay, Spoon and Norm. Why is it there are way more prototype railroaders that are like the hobby than people realize? What's that all about? Norm, what do you think?
Oh, well, I think I hired on the railroad because I like trains, so that helped. That was my. So I never did stop liking trains. Unfortunately, I also like CP. Not that I don't mean that really, but because we're competitors, I'd rather see the traffic on CN. But I growing up as a kid, trains were like our house in Camrose, where my parents moved to when I was in grade 6. It backed onto the CN yard in Camrose, and we used to sit on the fence posts at the fence line and watch the trains coming and going. So that was pretty cool.
And you never got tired of it working all day for the railroad and enjoying the hobby?
No, it's quite different because now I don't know if Tag's going to like this, but when I worked in the dispatching office, and of course train crews and dispatchers don't always agree on how things should be done. But when you go to your model railroad, it's your place to do what you want, and I try to be fairly faithful prototypically, but it's a lot more relaxed. So things happen, and who cares? But on the railroad, yeah, I had lots of crappy shifts and lots of bad accidents to deal with, but I still didn't ever lose my my enjoyment of the hobby.
Which part of the line were you dispatching?
Everything. I started dispatching in the Edmonton office, so we had the main line from Bigger to Jasper.
Okay.
And all the branch lines in Alberta and part of Saskatchewan.
Yeah, you might know another friend of mine, Guy Wapple, used to run Bigger to Edmonton and back.
Oh yeah, although see, I left in 2001, so
okay,
he would have been. I remember the name, but I don't remember him very well.
Right.
Another engine.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to make it known that I never ever disagreed with a dispatcher's over the radio.
Over the radio.
Over the radio my entire career. Every dispatcher I've ever worked with has always been extremely professional and some of the most brilliant individuals I have ever had the pleasure of doing business with.
That's probably true.
Yeah, I have not. They all have a face for radio.
Yes,
every single one of them. And like I said, there is. I've never disagreed with any decisions over the radio that they've ever made.
Yeah.
Once that little dot on the radio, once that light on the radio goes off, then that's a different story.
Yeah, right. No, we had a fellow in our office. He would talk to the train crews. He'd say, "But you don't see the big picture. I see the big picture." Well, okay, and it is true. You kind of get tunnel vision when you're on a train, as I've realized now when I've been working on a train. It's not always easy waiting to find out what's going on. But I always, because I worked in the engineering side, I had a great respect for those guys. And most running trades, when I was an operator, they were excellent. There's always the 5 to 10% of people in any industry or business who are not the best human beings around. So those are the ones that make your day difficult, and the rest of them are great.
I fall in the right in between there somewhere.
Yeah. And
I can remember one time we were sitting there. I can't remember who I was working with, but we were going from Green Bay to Fond du Lac, and we had made a set out and pick up in Neenah, Wisconsin. And we called and gave the dispatcher the lineup and our new totals. And for what a lineup is, for those that are not familiar, is we give the dispatcher how many loads, empties, tonnage, and the length of our train. When we, and in railroad terms, it's just called a lineup. That's what we call it. So he went on to say, well, I'm going to put you in the siding here at Winnebago, I believe it was. And I'm like,
we won't fit.
Okay. And he goes, yeah, you're going to meet 219 who's coming, who's just leaving Fond du Lac. And how many cars do they have? Just out of curiosity. And I said that right on the radio, trying to hope that he kind of, try to get him to trigger something.
Uh-huh.
And he says, well, they're like 8,000 feet long. Huh. Let's see here. I just gave you our totals. You're putting a 7,500 foot train into a siding that only holds 6,200 feet, and you're going to have us meet an 8,000 foot train there.
Uh-huh.
I said that right on the radio. The lights never changed. Nothing ever changed until I got up to that siding, and I actually the siding prior to that, and I stopped. And he called, and I called him, and he says, well, I told him, hey, I'm stopped at Dixie. And he says, why? I said, do some math here, and you'll thank me later. And he went back. He goes, all of a sudden, the red light drops, the switch goes over, everything goes I'm sitting here going, yep. And he gets back, and I actually called him on the phone when we got down to where we were. I said, I didn't want to be disrespectful on the radio. I said, but that would have really been a big mistake. And he goes, yeah, thanks for catching that. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. He goes, at least somebody was paying attention. I'm like, right?
At least you didn't have to do a sawby. Yeah.
I would have loved to have done that right there, because there's nowhere to shove back in either direction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah, I know. I almost caught myself when I was dispatching the Edson West sub. I had an oversiding train, and he was going to meet two guys at a 6,000 foot siding. I thought, I remembered in time before I lined the guy out of the siding before. So that it happens, and it happens quicker than you think.
Well, and sometimes I swear that the people that are in car control, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, my son works there.
Yeah, I swear to God, sometimes these guys are giving faulty information as far as the length of some of these cars. Because I swear that let's just take, for example, a 60-foot Norfolk Southern boxcar.
Uh-huh.
Some of them have got the drawbars are right tight. They're just the rigid drawbar. And some have got the massive cushioning devices that stick out 3 feet on each end of the car. And that you start adding up those extra foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, you do that over a mile or a mile and a half of a train.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to calculate, on paper it says you'll fit, but in reality you're like 3 car lengths too long.
But don't they give you a length and then a stretched length?
No, I don't get it. Well, see what I do. I go 10 mile an hour everywhere, and I drag 5 cars around all day long.
Uh-huh.
I don't really worry about. I don't even have another train that I deal with anymore. So a job comes over, drops off my stuff, and then we go and do our work, and then they come over the next day and pick up what we did and takes and drops off other stuff. So
okay, yeah.
But no, they don't give us a stretch length. Not that I know of. It's just the length.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, my son works in the train reporting center in Edmonton, and there's always discussion about how long, and they only go by the instructions that the train master.
We don't like
Yeah, he said it first, and then he left.
Yes, then he left.
I guess his wife was coming at him with a shovel or something.
This reminds me of a story of a friend of mine worked in Winnipeg, was flying out. He worked for the Armed Forces as a contractor, but he was going to hop a flight from Winnipeg out to Cold Lake in Alberta in the backseat of an F-18. So anyhow, they're going through the drill, the punch out drill, and all that stuff. So they're off and flying out across the forest in the middle of nowhere, and he says, "I heard the pilot go, uh-oh." He says, "That's one thing you don't want to do when you're in the back seat of a plane over boundless forest." Is the pilot go, "Uh-oh." He said, "What's wrong?" He says, "I'm having a little difficulty with the fuel transfer right now, so just stand by." But anyhow, they got it okay, and they didn't have to punch out.
Yeah, so it's not. Yeah, is usually not a very good to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny.
Especially just before the guy disappears.
Yeah. Goes out through the top. What
right?
What do you mean? Oh, where the hell are you going? Yeah.
So Norm's left us.
Well, I think what if I could just to kind of piggyback on what he was saying is, there he is. He's back. He appears to be back. Norm, are you there? Norm.
Yeah, our power went out.
Oh, you were saying you had the storm going on. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Anyway, we're fine. Nobody got electrocuted.
It's now 2 hours later.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a long stretch of elevator music in there.
Sorry
about that.
Continuum has been disrupted.
What were you going to say? You were going to say something there just before Norm came back. Tag.
I was just gonna say that I believe what Norm was gonna say is that sometimes the information being given to the people in car control or the people in the ops center and stuff like that, it's not necessarily faulty information. But it may not always be exactly the whole truth as to what's actually going on, because they just need something to get out of the way. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like we used to be on, when I was a conductor, I was on a pig train, and we were always told, just give the proper information on your X sheet, which is your X sheet tells you where your loads and empties are on your train. And I'm like, okay. So we'd give them the information. We have WC 6579. We have WC, WC 6002. We are 0 loads, 10 empties, 1,135 ton, 6,340 feet long. well, how the hell? Well, we got nothing but 5-packs. We only got 10 or 15 cars, but it's all 5-packs.
Yeah.
So in reality, we're 60 car lengths long, but we're being told to tell them we're only 15 car lengths.
Yeah.
So here they're planning a train that's 15 cars long. They don't look at the length; they look at the car. Oh, he's got 15 cars. Oh, all right. Well, yeah, we're 6,500 feet long. So. I mean, those would be pretty long 5-pack, actually.
And that can be a problem. How?
No, it's never a problem for the guys on the train.
No.
Yeah. I think they look more now at the length than they do at the number of cars.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. They are very, very in tune with, these detectors that they have now also, they will give, and all these car readers that are out there, they have gotten so accurate that that they can tell you doggone down to within a few feet of your actual length of your train. And like I say, some of the slack in there, and Norm, I know you know what I'm talking about. Some of that, I mean, you got 6 inches between cars no matter what, and so, or 3 inches on each end on normal cars. So, I mean, you start adding that up, sometimes that gets lost in translation, but I mean, for the most part, it's pretty doggone dead on as to how far you are, or how long.
Yeah. The technology is pretty amazing, because my son was telling me with the GPS and the units, they can tell within 6 feet where the train is.
Especially with the with all this positive train control, or PTC, that's going on. They have really got that narrowed down to within like literally like a couple of feet.
Right.
as to where you are with that satellite technology. It's actually it's pretty tremendous that that's even a thing.
That's right. Yeah. That and locomotive, how the locomotive is running, operating. They can tell what notch you're in. They can tell whether it's struggling or whatever. They got all that information. But
yeah, they do.
Yep.
Then why are you even there, Spoon?
Oh, I'm a vital asset. That's why.
True. Okay.
Yeah.
I am.
So now a minute ago, Norm, this is a great discussion. I still can't agree with Rob, but this is a great discussion. Rob,
Right.
I love you, Rob. Rob, get back to work. So you were saying there a minute ago, Spoon, that some there's only like 3 inches or 6 inches between cars or something. What were you
No, it's the slack in the knuckles.
Slack
Slack in the knuckles is there's a gap.
Yeah.
Knuckles. It's a what is it like? It's right around 2.5 to 3 inches when it's bunched in. When it's bunched up. So you start adding that up over the course of 100 car lengths.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost you gain a car length of slack action every so
many cars.
Many cars. You gain an actual extra car length just in the slack between the knuckles, and that doesn't include cushioning the devices or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. We have on Battle River Railway, we have lots of cars stored, and for a while we were trying to spot grain empties with 200 cars between the unit and the grain empties. So you'd have 2 to 3 car lengths of slack. You didn't know when to tell the guy to stop because the profile is up and down, and the slack will run out and then it runs back, and you just never know where it's going to end up.
Yeah.
That sounds like a blast.
Okay, that will do.
Yeah.
Not.
Well, that's right. Anyways.
So you were saying bigger? You were saying between Bigger and Jasper?
That's correct. Yeah, the Wainwright sub goes from Bigger to Edmonton.
So, something that you'll learn about this show, Norm, if you start listening more.
Yes. I get the dig. Yeah.
Yeah. Is that we're very adamant, or we like to let everybody, not adamant, we like to let everybody know what we're talking about. So where is Bigger? Is that in Saskatchewan or?
Bigger is about 60 miles west of Saskatoon in Saskatchewan.
And is it Bigger, Bigger?
That's correct. Big R, A-R, Big R.
Okay.
But they do have a sign.
New York is big, but this is bigger.
This is bigger. That's correct.
And at one time, the old roundhouse at the CN yard in town was a turkey farm. I remember that.
Yeah. I haven't been there for a long time. I don't know if the roundhouse is still.
I think it's gone now.
The roundhouse, part of the roundhouse in Hanna, Alberta, is still there. It was used as an auction mart for a while.
The difference on the prairies, the Canadian prairies, and I'm sure it's the same in the American Midwest, which begins somewhere west of the Grand
Canadian
Rapids.
Shield.
Yeah. Ooh, there you go, Bruce. There's another twist. He says Norm says the Midwest begins west of the Canadian Shield.
No, that'd be the West.
The West does.
Oh, the West. Okay.
The Canadian West begins right.
Well, we might as well ask Norm now.
Yes.
Where do you think the Midwest starts in North America? What's a city you would pick that's in the Midwest?
Midwest.
Yeah.
Boy, I don't know. Chicago.
There you go. Thank you. See, that's spoken like it. That's exactly the right answer. The Midwest begins in Chicago. I don't want to discuss. Although I did decide at one point it was a Central Time Zone line, didn't I? I could live with that.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody tried to tell me Detroit was in the Midwest, and it's not. Motown is not in the Midwest. I'm sorry.
It's right across the river from Sarnia.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's right north. It's right north. It's right north of Windsor.
Oh, that Windsor. Yeah, you're right. Sarnia is the other way. Yeah.
Sarnia and Port Huron.
Lionel, we might as well just leave the room.
Yeah, I think we might as well.
Bruce is gonna go off. We could leave and an hour later come back and he's still gonna be on the same thing.
Yeah.
And Norm?
Love you, Bruce.
Yeah. Hey, Norm, when you're taking a photo with your phone.
Yes.
Oh boy.
You're gonna have to
Oh,
start.
dear.
You're gonna have to get Norm to or Rod to explain all this to you.
Sure.
All right. So, so you were the dispatcher between Bigger, Saskatchewan, and you said Jasper, Alberta.
Well, Edmonton, Alberta. That's the Wainwright sub.
Okay.
And there were times when the Wainwright sub was split. You would go Bigger to Wainwright, and then Wainwright to Edmonton. Normally on days. The rest of the time it was combined, so one dispatcher controlled it all. And then the Edson sub was normally the Edson East sub, which was Edmonton to Edson, and the Edson West sub was Edson to Jasper.
Okay. So, and how many years were you a dispatcher?
From 1981 until about 1986, when I went to Montreal to Motive Power Control. And then when I became a chief, I couldn't dispatch anymore, permanent chief.
Okay. So, what's a chief?
He's the assistant chief train dispatcher. He supervises the dispatchers in the office.
Okay.
It's a management position. And you organize with the yards and with the engineering people, work blocks, order trains they're going to run out of each yard, that sort of stuff. And you had to coordinate with all the crewing and stuff to make sure it all happened.
Right. And then you had to deal with those union guys, those locomotive engineers that were union reps and stuff.
Yeah, a little bit. More dealing with when they took rest away from home. That was the more difficult thing to deal with.
Okay.
And I understand they don't want to. If you get to Edson and you're tired, you need to go to bed. But they had a train that ran out of Edmonton. Actually, it came out of Montreal called 201, and we used to call it the 201 lottery at Edson because everybody from Jasper would come down to Edson in the late afternoon, evening, take rest to see if they would be the crew that got 201 because that was a hot train. So
I never met or talked to a chief dispatcher that wasn't one of the most brilliant individuals that I had ever talked to on the phone. Never disagreed with a single decision they've ever made either. Just absolutely salt of the earth individuals. I'm just saying.
They are.
They are absolutely.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
Some are real jerks. Just
some
like
are sharp like a bowling ball too. But I'm just saying.
Yeah. But you know what's happened now? After I left in 2001, Hunter Harrison decided that the chief train dispatchers are actually, they called the manager of corridor operations, the manager of crew utilization.
Everybody's title changed. But
yes, yeah. But Hunter decided that they weren't smart enough to make decisions about what trains to run. So all of that was taken away from them.
Yep. Yeah, I remember all of that because the WC got taken over in 2001. So
right.
It was that was
a learning curve.
Oh, that was sure. That's one way you could put it. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
That was.
You guys are opening a can of worms of questions. So just so everybody knows, who's Hunter Harrison?
Well, he's no longer with us, but he was the chief executive officer, CEO of Canadian National. He came with the Illinois Central when CN purchased it, and he ended up replacing Paul Tellier when Paul retired, and went on to infamy.
That's a very good way of. That's a very political.
I was going to say, didn't he go? Wasn't he with CSX for a while?
He went to CN first, and then CP, and then CSX.
Yeah, so basically, he screwed up. He screwed up one railroad, screwed up CP, screwed up CN. It was the process of screwing up CSX, and he died.
Yeah, I don't know,
or so I hear.
I don't know that screwed up. I was not a fan of some of the things he did. He did some stuff that was appropriate, but he also didn't think anybody else knew anything. So it was all his idea, and his only focus was money, and that gets you so far. But as far as treating employees or customers well, I don't think that happened a lot. So.
There was a lot of business that we still have yet to get back.
That's right.
From that era,
and CP
regime is actually kind of working really hard to try to get that back. And but it's a long uphill road. Some of these, once a company is soured on something, it's very difficult to convince them to come back into the fray, so to speak.
That's right. I know CP suffered more than CN did in that area. Like CP lost a lot of container traffic to CN because of some things that happened, I guess. I'm not privy to everything.
He had the whole Duluth, Minnesota, and Eastern merger was under Hunter Harrison's reign, where he started to consolidate the DM&E when the CP bought that back, and then he kind of started tearing it apart, if I remember.
Yeah. Well, he didn't want to go to the coal fields, I know.
Yeah, after the DM&E had already gotten all the land rights and everything they needed, and they were just basically waiting for somebody to throw the money at them to be able to get in there, and he came and pulled that right out from underneath. That was millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of revenue to the DM&E that was lost, never to be back again.
Yeah. But anyway, we won't drag him in the mud anymore. He's not with us.
No. He wasn't completely terrible. He had some good ideas. It was just execution that wasn't the best.
And he was arrogant. So.
Yeah.
Sound like a great guy, Bruce.
Oh, I have talked to several of my friends who worked on CP and also CN, and they had nothing good to say about the man.
Well, I will say this much: he did do a lot for the stock.
Yes, that was the only thing.
I mean, he made the railroad money. He actually took the railroad from and actually made it a viable entity to where it was profitable.
Right.
It was the technique in which he did it that was unsavory.
Yeah, CN was already profitable, but not near. Like, I think our operating ratio when I left was around 90% or 88 or something like that, and he took it down. Yeah,
that's big.
Well, yeah, but he took it down to what, 58 or below 60%.
It was under 60% for a while.
Yeah. Operating ratio, by that you mean that they made 10% on their money. Like if it was 88%, they're making 12% profit.
No, it's the number of dollars it takes, or what it costs you to make $1. So if it took 55 cents to make $1, the rest is profit.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was a CN guy. And they loved him so. Okay, so it was basically he made profit is what he did by slashing things and.
Yeah, he did have some things about, like, his on-time performance wasn't necessarily train on-time performance; it was car spotting, and so he eliminated a lot of excess car supply to help the yards so that the traffic would flow a little quicker.
So what is car supply?
Car supply is if you have an industry like a paper mill and he needs 50 cars a day, or no, not that many. So whatever. If he needed 50 cars a day and you're actually supplying him, or you had enough cars for your car cycle, which is from the industry out to where they're shipping and back to the industry, you'd have more cars than you required to maintain that car supply every day.
Okay.
So he eliminated a bunch of that, which took a lot of stress off of some of the yards. So that was a good thing that he did. It was just kind of hard to take.
Yeah, I know in Green Bay we have a paper mill here that got hit really hard with that. Mm-hmm. Part of the problem is that the Wisconsin Central didn't really charge for demurrage. while
Right.
the cars were sitting in the yard. And when when they took us over, and Hunter Harrison, when Tellier was retired and Hunter Harrison took over, he kind of said, "Yeah, well, guess what? You have these cars in our yard. You're going to start paying for them if you're going to. We're not a warehouse for you. These are we are not mobile warehousing." So, the paper mill Procter and Gamble in Green Bay here, it'd be nothing for them to have 40, 50 cars sitting in the yard,
right,
sitting there waiting, and they'd take maybe 10 or 12 a day or whatever. Yeah. But then they'd take 12 a day, but then they get in another 25 or 30. So they were always accruing cars, but not getting charged for them.
Right. And the yard got pretty congested.
And the yard it'd be nothing for them to have 40 or 50 cars sitting in the yard. And then all of a sudden, as soon as they got charged, they stopped getting cars in. Train size went down because you didn't have all these cars coming in, because they were using up what was in the yard. And then all of a sudden one day they said, "Yeah, we'll take everything." And they went over and took them, because once they're on their property, they've got X number of days to get it unloaded. And so it was a long time, and that business is actually starting to come back a little bit because paper industry is getting a little bit busy again, and especially nowadays, because Green Bay makes a lot of toilet paper.
Yeah. No, it's a balancing act, and he was adamant that we're not going to be sitting on empty car supply just so that you never run out.
Okay, well, I think that's something. Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong here.
Go ahead.
That sounds like something that most people wouldn't know about. That like a lot of big businesses would have cars sitting in the yard waiting to supply them, because as a model railroader, you don't really see or know any of that. So I mean, that's kind of the cool part of the prototype railroaders coming out of the woodwork now, and
Yeah, that's true. But then I can remember stories of the older days when a lot of the agents in a town would know what their customer needed, and they would make sure they had some spares cars kicking around in their yards for their customer, and that's the way it was. But try to pinch everything right to the so there's no fat left is what happened, and then all of a sudden if something happens and the company can't get its cars, well, then they're hooped.
Well, now they do. Norm, correct me on this. But now what they do is they actually will take and assign a pool of cars to an industry.
Right.
And because at the end of when my conductor and I, we get our yard turnover, and it shows the train that came in and the cars that are all sitting there. If it's a car in a CN pool, that pool number is actually at the end of the car description on our train list. Mm-hmm. So we can actually see whether or not the pool of these cars are matching up. So we can see, these cars came from Edmonton. They went west. So now we can say a P047 car, for example, which is the P. The P stands for pool, and then 047 is the pool number. You might have 6 of those cars sitting in your yard, all going to one customer. Well, those cars are going to basically go reverse route back to where they came from, because that pool is in a cycle. Does that sound about right, the way it works, Norm?
Yeah, different industries have pools. That's right. And then, what they try and do is build enough cars into the pool to fit the normal cycle of load, ship to customer, unload, ship back. So if something hiccups, like a derailment or a washout or something, then your pool supply, it's just like on time delivery of auto parts. It's the same idea.
Yeah. Now, would those cars necessarily be labeled with when empty return to on them, or
no?
Not anymore. Right?
Not anymore. No, because it used to be. Well, like you say, it used to be right on the side of the car, return to agent
Yes.
at
Right.
Edmonton.
And I know a lot of the stuff in Windsor from the auto plants. The Essex Terminal Railway switched a lot of those, be like when empty, return to Essex Terminal Railway Windsor.
Well, like
return to CN Windsor, that type of thing.
Yeah, the Green Bay Western actually had like 86-foot boxcars, 86-foot long boxcars. They had a handful of those things, but they were involved in they were assigned to the Ford Motor Plant or Ford Motor Company plant in Michigan. And so right on the side of their car, it says, when empty, return to, this town in Michigan. Yeah. And then that was where it was. They were not based out of Green Bay. They were actually based out of that Ford plant. So everything kept cycling back, and you know what I mean? Yeah. So
now they have reverse billing. So when it gets emptied, when somebody shows it in the computer as empty, then the reverse bill kicks in, and that's how it gets sent back to its origin. Things like grain empties, especially on Western Canada, they are in a big grain empty pool, and then they have a group called a grain desk, and they decide which elevators are going to get the grain empties, etc. So
this is really fascinating, actually, to be listening to it. It really is.
But this is the kind of stuff that you can, if you know more of how the modern railroad works,
well, yeah,
you can work that into your operation scheme on your layout.
One of the things I've done in the past is I have actually used a computer program called ShipIt, SHIPIT !
Yes.
And in that program, you have to kind of trick the computer to do these things. But you can actually, I actually used to set it up so that I would have like grain empties that were sitting in a siding off spot someplace, just in the middle of what would be my virtual layout. They would be like in some town. And I had it set up to where the co-op or the grain elevator would take so many cars a day, and they were to be fed from that siding. So I would have a train that would come in, and they'd have to set cars out at the siding and then pick up other cars in the siding to take to the grain elevator. And I had it set up so it was almost like the oldest cars first.
Right.
So you're always taking the oldest ones, the ones that are sitting there longest, are the ones that are shipping, are being loaded.
Yeah, first in, first out.
First in, first out. Yeah. So I had it set up kind of like that, but it took quite a bit of trickery in order to do it, because ShipIt is a little difficult to try to get it to do kind of those fancy things like that. Mm-hmm. So, but I got it to work, and it was kind of neat to watch the cycle of the cars being able to do it. So now you could do something similar to that in like using car cards by simply having a autonomous switch card for that job that says, when you get to this location, pull this card, and it says such and such an industry requires three empties, the 3 empty cars from this siding, use first 3 cars, blah blah blah, first eastmost or northmost or whatever it is. And you could actually work those things into it, even using a car card system. As the train goes down the line, you could actually do that. Any number of different ways you could do stuff like that. So it's something that's pretty easily integrated into a layout if you have the room to do it. That's kind of the key. You kind of have to have the room to be able to do it.
I have on my layout, I use car cards and waybills. And normally when I do my staging, I'll only send enough cars to fill each spot. Like the lumber mill takes 3 bulkheads and 2 boxcars every day. And so I'll send close to that number. And sometimes there's a backtrack at that siding, and whatever's left over sits there, and if you're short, you go and grab some from there and spot. So that's the same idea. It's just quite simplified.
Yeah, I mean, I think car cards is a really like the most versatile way to do something like that. Like you said, you can almost set it up any way you want.
Right. And I know other people use JMRI. I have a friend in Camrose who uses that. I find it a little difficult to understand because the cars will come out of order in the train goes into staging, and then when it comes back out of staging and the cars are rebuilt, it's kind of a strange.
Yeah, it doesn't come back out the same way it came in.
No, so you really should restage it according to what it says. If you got 6 cars that are supposed to be set off in this yard to go somewhere, they should all be together, you would hope. That's kind of the idea of blocking. But and blocking, like you probably switch with where everything goes. You know what kind of car type goes where.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, if you only have 7 customers to deal with, and
it's pretty repetitive stuff. Yeah.
Pretty much. Hey, there's a gondola. Well, there's only one place that takes gondolas.
That's right.
Well, that's like about a week ago, Spoon. There was you were going on about there was some flat cars coming in with some sort of steel on them, and you were like, "What are they using that steel for?" And you were talking about what they might be using, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, "Well, what difference does it make to you? Just deliver the crap and get the hell out of there."
Well, it's just interesting to see what.
Well, yeah, I know it was interesting for you, but
all going to make windmills. We found out.
I know, but it was just the way you were going. Like, I don't understand what they're getting. This is for. Why are they getting this stuff? And I'm thinking, talk about a nosy neighbor.
Well, I mean,
that's part of being a train crew, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're one of the last crews that actually face-to-face talks with the customer.
Yeah.
Most of the other ones, they don't ever see or talk with anybody.
No.
We
actually still do that. So yeah, we just talk. And
I was just trying to say that you were cute. All right, I won't try to compliment. I won't try to compliment you again.
Oh, holy cow!
Gee whiz, that was a mistake for crying out loud.
But we do the same thing on Battle River Railway. We have a fertilizer company, and every time I stop there, I'll say, "Do you need the cars in what order?" And he'll tell you if they're unloading a certain type of fertilizer. We don't want this one; we want this one. So that's what we do on CN. Probably doesn't happen that way because they're very judicious with the amount of switches that each industry gets. So.
Yeah, well, I can just see Spoon pounding on the office door before they open up. Hey, what's in these cars? I need to know what's in these cars.
I know what's in all the cars. I know what's in all of them. But a good example is we get these bulkhead flat cars with giant metal rings on them, and they're they're the connection rings for the different stages of the windmill tower. And all of a sudden we got these, and I looked at my conductor and I said, "Why is there only 2 rows of those on that car?" He goes, "What?" And he goes, "Typically when we get these, there's like 4 rows of those. Why are these? Those don't look any bigger than. I wonder why they put them on 2 separate cars. Why are we only got 2?" Come to find out, they came from a different manufacturer, a different mill. They came from a different steel mill, and so they had 2 cars sitting there, and they loaded them both.
And you needed to know that why?
Curiosity.
I can just see when you said your conductor said what? I can just see your conductor sitting there drinking his coffee, and someone's going, "Hey, did you notice those cars? They only have 2 rings on them. Usually they have 4, but these ones only have 2." And the conductor kind of looks at you and goes, "What?"
I'm not quite that panicked or it. I'll be sitting there going, "Huh? Well, look at that."
He's just humoring you, for crying out loud.
He does that all the time. Yeah, he's a good guy.
Well, so are you. You somewhere way back there in this discussion, Norm, I hope you don't mind this discussion because people are going to love it because of your experience with the railroad. People are going to be very interested in this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fine.
Uh-huh.
Way to talk it up there, Norm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just using my assistant chief attitude here. So
I kind of felt like.
Oh, wait a minute. That's way too much talking right there. Then.
You want to go home?
Yeah.
All right. Yep.
So explain to me again that so a dispatcher. There's how many dispatchers would there have been on that sub that you said you were from Bigger to Wainwright? How many guys would be working that? Just one guy, or
on days it usually was two, one for each end, and then on nights, afternoons and nights there was just one.
Okay.
It was 250 miles long.
All right. So which is hey Spoon, 250 miles long. This is a great opportunity for you to mention Serge LaBelle again, and maybe he'll send you another present.
That's 3 miles too long. 247, wasn't he?
I thought it was 259 from. Did you know, Norm, that from Septiel to Labrador City, I think it's 259 miles was the.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, our buddy Serge LaBelle, he runs single. He's a one-man cruise, running up and down that line with 240 car or trains. One-man crew.
And what's their track speed?
I didn't ask.
I believe he said it was somewhere around 35 or 40 mile an hour the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're just straight running. That's 6 hours. Yeah.
Well, no, it takes them
a lot longer than that.
4 days to get there and back.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys. Which numbers were you picking in the pool?
Yeah, everybody. Serge, you better mail in again. You better send in another.
I've got the answer.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going with 259. I remember 259.
Okay. I'm going 247.
Oh,
I don't have a clue.
Good answer.
We know that, Norm, but what's your number?
Well, if you go by the Price is Right rule, Lionel wins because he's the closest without going over. No, actually, you went over. You said 259, so Spoon wins. 257 is the answer.
Oh, I knew there was a 7 in there someplace. And I knew it was 2.
There you go.
So you're the dispatcher on the Bigger to Wainwright line, and then you move up to chief or assist. How many? How many
people
subdivisions?
Do you supervise?
What's that?
How many people did I supervise?
Yeah, like how many? Because each guy, how many divisions or subs were like? What did you call between Bigger and Wainwright? If I have to say Bigger one more time, I think I'm gonna. Rob, this is all your fault. So how many of these? What is it? A division, subdivision between Bigger and Wainwright?
It's called the Wainwright subdivision, but it can be split into two parts.
Right.
So there be the Wainwright East and the Wainwright West. And when I was chiefing, and this was prior to, say, Winnipeg and Saskatoon and Prince George of Kamloops moving into Edmonton, there was a mainline chief and a branch chief. So the mainline chief handled everything on the main line from Bigger to Jasper, plus the coal branch, which was where from Edson down to the coal mines, and the Grand Cache sub from Swan Landing, which is just east of Jasper, up to Grand Cache, or Winnie Andy it's called, where the coal mine is. So that was the territory that the mainline chief looked after, and the branch chief looked after all of the other lines in Alberta and part of Saskatchewan. So the Camrose and Three Hill sub down to Calgary, the Drumheller Oyen sub over to Kindersley, which goes eventually to Saskatoon, the Vegreville Blackfoot subs, which went from Edmonton, that was the secondary main line, over to it's called the Prairie North line, and then any other branch lines, the Sangudo sub, Coronado, Bonnyville, Alliance, Stettler. There were a whole bunch of smaller subdivisions that would only have one train a day or 2 to 3 trains a day. So the territory was divided up what we thought was an even split, so that one guy wasn't really overworked.
So how many dispatchers would be underneath you then?
On the mainline job, you could have 4, 5, 6, I guess, on the main line, and maybe 4 or 5, depending on how much territory they had. They could split it up into larger or smaller portions depending on the time of the day. Yep. Go ahead.
Was somebody else going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to ask. Were they split into different desks?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like each desk had a segment then?
That's correct. Yeah.
I was going to ask a question. I'm surprised Lionel hasn't asked. Is that when you were chief, did anybody ask you had to use the cone of silence?
First of all, how much do you know about chaos?
What did you say, sir?
What? Chaos.
Oh, chaos. Yes, of course. Well, that's an international criminal organization that was founded, I think in 1957.
How's that? What?
57.
Agent 57 is in Hong Kong. Hong Kong. Hodgkins, raise the cone of silence.
What?
Raise the cone of silence!
Perhaps we could just talk softly, sir.
Yeah, we had our own cone of silence. Yeah. We had one chief who would work like mad from 2300 till about not 30 to get his lineup out, and then he would take out a phone book, cover it with a paper towel, and put his head down. And he said, "Don't bother me till 5:30 in the morning." so that was his cone of silence. But,
and the chief was responsible, did you say earlier, for like assigning the trains or what? Like,
yeah. Further away from home crews, you had to balance crews. So if you had an imbalance of traffic, train traffic, then you would order up deadheads from one terminal to make sure that there were enough crews at the away from home terminal to operate all the trains.
Right. So it sounds like
and then you also worked with the coal companies and the sulfur companies to manage when the empty coal trains or the empty sulfur trains would arrive so that they wouldn't get flooded with trains or not have enough cars or whatever. So that was part of the duties of the assistant chief.
Would you ever go out on the road and just kind of like, because you're the dispatcher, just to familiarize yourself with the territory, or?
Yes, we had road trips usually once a year, and depending on how busy it was, how many people we had available, it could be just for a day or it could be for a whole week. I've done both.
Oh, okay.
And so I took trips to extended run trips where the train crew went from Edmonton to Jasper instead of just Edmonton to Edson. I've done both. That's a long trip, going 250 miles. I'm sure Spoon can attest to that. That's tough. That's a tough job.
Yeah.
And
we always used to like it when the dispatchers came with us because it was an opportunity to explain why. Here's the way here in your computer, all they see are lines and numbers. Here's the actual way this lays out. So if you're doing this, you're actually causing this and this and this to back up, and then you're complaining because this is all backed up. Well, we need to stop. Oh yeah. Well, that doesn't make very much sense. And it's always amazing that when the dispatchers that would ride with the crews went back to the desk, the dispatching of the whole system changed.
Right.
It was always those light bulb moments every time, and it actually really made the interaction between the crews and the dispatcher much more pleasant. It was much more personable. Mm-hmm. Everything was always, it was always better when they would come out and do that.
That's right. It also works in reverse, where we've had some engineers or conductors who are adamant that the dispatchers are all a bunch of crackpots, so they would send them into the office to see what they actually have to deal with. And it's not just the trains, it's the engineering people who are looking for time to change a broken rail or fix something and trying to fit the trains in. And if you make them eat here, then that gives this guy time to do his work. If you make them eat in another place, he doesn't get his time. Same idea.
I used to make it a point when I went to recertification school when they used to have it in Stevens Point, and the dispatching center was out of there. It was always on the WC, and up until they moved it to Chicago here, oh man, 7-8 years ago, 6-7. Oh man, it's been a while. Well, yeah. But I would, I've always made it a point when my first day at recert that night, I would go directly from class right to the dispatcher's office, and I would sit in on the territory that I would run. Right. And I got to know those guys really, really good. And a couple of times even they'd say, how would you do this? You're all here running. How would you do this? You got right. this, and this. And then, oh yeah, by the way, in 15 minutes, you're going to have this, and this coming on. How are you going to handle this? I'm like, I have no idea. See, right. And so you get to, like you said, you get to see the other side of the coin.
That's right.
And that makes it easier because then, hey, you know what? Don't get so frustrated. Don't get all bent out of shape. He'll get to us. Don't worry about it. He's, you know what? He's got this going on, this going on, this going on. I guarantee you he's probably, looking at the clock. He's going to have this going on. Mm-hmm. We'll be all right. We got time.
But it is very important to know, especially where a siding ends on a curve, if you know where the signals are, if you know where the grades are, which sidings are easy to get into, which sidings cause trouble.
It's really funny you brought that up because that was one of the things that was always unknown is we had a couple of sidings where the signals were actually obstructed.
Yeah.
So things would, cruise, the speed of the siding was one, but the crews could only go so fast because they never knew.
You couldn't see it.
You couldn't see this. They couldn't see, and not to mention you're on a hill, mm-hmm. and you're kind of your train is draped over the top of a hill, so you have your hind end is going one direction, your head end's going another direction, and you got to try to stop at this, do all the sorts of things. They came right out, and they ended up extending the siding like 3,000 feet in order to try to prevent that based off of the dispatchers coming back and saying, hey, this needs to be fixed because here's what the crews have to deal with.
Right.
And
even with new track construction, like they've done a lot in Western Canada here because of all the traffic we used to have. But still they would build new track and put a signal in a place where it's useless. You're coming around the corner at 10 miles an hour because you don't have any idea what that signal is going to say.
Right. And if you're coming on an approach and you're following another train, it's kind of a crapshoot what you have.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless it's a green, unless you came in there on a green, you pretty much have to be ready for anything.
Although it's not called approach anymore, it's clear to stop, right?
I think we still call it approach.
Oh, really? Yeah, we have in Canada with the CROR, Canadian Rail Operating Rules, they changed the names of all the signals to make them a little more understandable. So what used to be called an approach signal in Canada is now called clear to stop. And that's a yellow or a yellow over red. So
I think we still call it an approach.
It is. I don't know what rule book you
in the USOR. I think it's an.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I've always been interested in how the tracks are arranged. So if I went on a vacation, I would make sure if I went on road trips, I knew what to look for or what I wanted to look for and listen to what they had to say. I also, when I was dispatching, this would have been about 1982, 83, if I was going to have the passenger train meet somebody, I would always call up the engineer and say, listen, if I hook you here for this guy, can you still make it to Edmonton on time? And I just go by what they said. And if they said yes, then that determined where the meet was going to be.
Yeah.
Just to keep the heavy guy going.
We always used to have to do that at Duval Tower down just outside of Proviso, down by Chicago there. It is when we called the tower, they would say, can you clear me in 10 minutes? Uh-huh. You don't hesitate or ever say no, because then you're going to sit and you might be there for hours before you get a chance to get across the diamond there, right, waiting for for anything. So
yeah, and you better make sure you're clear, or he won't do it again.
Yep. You say 10 minutes, yes, I can. Okay, and that clock started from the time you gained a lot of trust, because dispatchers I've noticed, just because I've got some that are friends and stuff like that are become friends, that they've come right out and said, I know that this guy lies to me all the time. I can ask him a question and he's going to lie right to me, and if I ask him it's going to be this, well, I know better than to believe what he's going to say, because he's never out of the way when he says he's going to be.
That's right. And I think too, for some engineers are extremely careful and cautious, and if they get a signal to go, they know they're going to go in the siding, they will not get there. Even though they should be there first, they won't. They'll be there. The guy will come down the main and be stopped before this other guy's heading in. So it doesn't matter how you plan it. For some people, because they're not as confident or want to never make a mistake, they just take their time, and that you just have to know who those people are.
Yeah. I mean, when I was starting out, full disclosure, that's the way I was when I was first started out being an engineer. But I was younger, and I didn't know. I was trying to get used to doing it, and I didn't want to make any, like you said, I didn't want to make any mistakes. And as my time went on, I'd be like, "Oh, look at this! Oh boy, this guy's leaving Stevens Point. We better we better pick him up and put him down here. We got to get in that siding so our hind end clears, so he can just keep on rolling. Because the faster he gets past us, the faster we can get to the point and get to the hotel."
That's right.
It took me a little while to get to understand that concept, but once you do, you understand it. I think understanding the equipment and what the equipment will and will not do helps a lot too.
Yeah, it used to be easier before there was so much monitoring of what was going on.
Right.
People are with event recorders and such. They're quite reluctant to speed, and a lot of that would happen. People would take chances, but I mean that was in the 80s, prior to we had a couple bad head-on collisions here that made some rule changes and a lot of supervision changes. So that some of that stuff is gone now. You can't do it, but
yep.
Yeah, the head-on collision's not good. So, great discussion, eh, Bruce?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I don't know what Rob was talking about. Rob, I thought Norm was very interesting.
Well, he could have been, but you got him talking about trades. So.
That's right.
Perfect.
Yeah. So how many guys does it take to operate your layout?
I normally, right now, try to have 10 plus myself. And that seems like a lot for the size of the room. And the aisle width in front of the yard is a little cramped, but I like to make it difficult for Rob to stay dispatching sanely.
Okay.
And it actually is quite entertaining. There's a dispatcher, so that's one, and a yard master, that's two, and a yard crew. And then I have somebody help myself in the staging area, so that's a fourth guy. And then there's 6 others who are train crews.
And do you have, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope.
Do you have trouble rustling up that many guys, or you got a pretty steady crew?
Sometimes. Most of the people come from Edmonton. Some come from Calgary. There's a couple from Red Deer area, and then some from around here. There's a former train dispatcher that I work with at Battle River Railway. I didn't even know he was a model railroader till he retired. But anyway, he comes. And then a couple guys from Camrose.
There's way more of you prototype guys that are model railroaders than anybody would imagine. I got to talk again. Hopefully by now I have. There's a young fella named Matt Martin, who's train master for the BNSF out in Alliance, Nebraska.
Okay.
He's a big and all you guys. The thing I notice about all you guys, or maybe it's just the guys that are part of the AML Nation, but you guys are all very interested in sharing your knowledge. You know, you seem to enjoy sharing your knowledge of the railroad with people who are model railroaders or fans of railroading.
Right.
So I think that's cool.
It is a fun thing to do. I like to see people operating properly, but that's a pretty individualistic thing, right? You can't criticize somebody for doing the things he wants.
Yeah. What kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Come on, you guys. What's
operating system?
Yeah, the power.
Okay. Digitrax.
Digitrax. Okay, and is it Digitrax the main operating system in that area?
Yes and no. I guess for most of the people that I knew when I purchased Digitrax had Digitrax. There's another fellow lives about 5 miles from me. He has NCE, and a couple guys have MRC. Digitrax, they all have their advantages and disadvantages. I quite like the Digitrax Wi-Fi. I just bought a Wi-Fi module to add in, and it eliminates a lot of the button problems that Digitrax has on their throttles.
Okay.
And I'm pretty impressed with that. I don't have any boosters. I just have the base station thing, and that's it. I only have a 5 amp system, and I can run 6 or 7 trains, engines at the same time, and each train normally has 2 sound equipped locomotives on it, maybe 3,
right.
And yard engines only 1. And I never have there's circuit breaker protection, but I only use the 1 5 amp booster.
Yeah, I think people get a little carried away with how much circuit breakers. I mean, if you have it wired properly and guys aren't all constantly running turnouts or switches, you're okay anyways. It's not.
Yeah. The problem with my layout is that it used to be a straight DC, of course, with I had a 4-position rotary switch that I could select 4 different cabs, but some of my switches are still, or yard lead or switch leads are still wired up for DC. So I don't, people are used to running right up to the frog,
right,
or almost up to the points before they figure out that the points aren't lined the right way. So that can be an issue, but most of the people operating are aware of that now, and a lot of those things don't happen. What I really like and is the signal system, because it's so much more responsive than train orders, even though I love train orders. On my layout, the sidings are far too close together to be able to keep up with a train order system.
Right. I love train orders, don't I, guys?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do.
I had another question. Don't tell me. Let me guess. What was it? I can't remember now. Oh, yeah. No, that wasn't it.
Okay. How long is your typical operating session?
Use 3 to 4 hours.
Okay. Fast clock or no?
Fast clock is 4 to 1.
Okay.
And if it was train orders, it would be 3 to 1.
Right.
You just can't stay ahead of the game at 4 to 1, or some people have 6 to 1, and I can't do that.
Yeah.
But that's their choice.
Do you provide lunch?
Yeah, actually, we usually start about 13:30 and end about 17:30, and then my wife is very generous, and she will make chili, or we'll order pizza, or I'll make hamburgers, whatever. So
I'll be there.
Pretty nice.
Yeah. You can be there in about a day and a half there, Spoon. So yeah.
Yeah.
There's going to be chili and pizza. I could be there even quicker.
He still has to get the subtil too.
Yeah,
I do.
Now, is this your current wife?
It's my only wife. Yeah.
Oh my God! Seriously. There's a story behind. There's a story behind that statement.
I see. Are you jealous?
Yeah.
No,
there you go. Sure.
When they did an interview with me, I said, "Well, my current wife."
Uh-huh. And he never let you forget it.
Never.
No, I can't. I just can't. It's not in my. I'm not able to.
my operating session is like I put out. I have certain trains that make setouts and pickups, and then I run a lot of trains that are just straight, like a unit grain train or a unit coal train. So there's a lot of variation. Then there's two-way freights that operate. So there's something for everybody, and then I think 2 passenger trains per session usually.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Sounds like
Indeed.
Sounds great. And do you operate on other layouts? That's what I was going to ask you. Do you operate on?
Yeah. There's like this neighbor that's 5 miles away. I operate on his, and the guy in Camrose on his. I go to the Fort Edmonton layout, and they up until the last six months or so, they would have an open operating session every 3 months, and sometimes it would be an all-day affair or half a day, depending on what's happening at Fort Edmonton Park.
Right.
But
Okay, I'm going to ask you my $1 million question. I ask everybody, and because you've listened to pretty much all the podcasts and some of them twice, you'll be.
I'll know the answer.
Yeah, exactly. So you've been in the hobby a long, long time. It's growing, shrinking. What's happening?
Well, I think it's a rich man hobby. It's not cheap. There's been some fantastic developments. Like I was very reluctant to get into DCC, and now I can't imagine operating without it. Both Tsunami, like Soundtracks, and ESU make fantastic decoders. I am quite taken with the Tsunami 2s. There's a lot there. They've improved their motor capability from the original Tsunamis are difficult to get them to run smoothly. But overall, I will MU anything with anything. ESU with Soundtracks, brass with all kinds of plastic variations. I don't have any issue putting them together. Only with advanced consisting. My only complaint, I guess, is that ESU decided to go with full throttle as opposed to manual notching, which is your typical problem with the people had with the video systems that were in place. There were two, and they weren't compatible with each other. At least ESU and Soundtracks, you can run them together. It's just that the part of manually notching the engine up and down while the speed remains constant is different.
What are video systems? What do you mean by that?
Well, VHS versus.
I see. You're just comparing them. I get you.
Yeah.
I get it. It was
the
a
same
comparison.
problem happened. Yeah, and VHS won out over what was the other one called?
Beta.
And Beta was fine, except that they were too different. And yeah,
now you're showing your age.
Yep.
Don't ever talk about that again.
No, okay. But I appreciate everything. Like people complain about this engine doesn't work right, and I've had my issues with some products, but if they didn't make them, nobody else is going to make them. So once you get the issues worked out, it's just the cost at the beginning. If you get an engine that doesn't work and you got to send it in, well, you shouldn't be paying money to send in a defective engine.
Well, I think model railroading's cheaper in golf, so we're off to the races there.
Oh yeah, and skidooing.
Yeah, that's true. Or having a Harley too; it's a lot cheaper than that.
That's right. So
especially if you got more than one.
It's I mean, I suppose I'm like everybody else. I have too much equipment.
There you go.
Rob can tell you my staging is a lot of manual staging, and there's a lot of cars there, and I have put on detection on all of my equipment so that everything works properly when it's in the CTC. But in all honesty, people say it's very expensive to do that, and it's relatively cheap. I bet if I spent $100 on the things I needed to make my wheel sets detectable, I don't know. I bought one can of what's it called? It's kind of like a black. I can't remember the name of it right now, of course. And then resistors. Kevin Rudko actually gave me a big string of 10,000 ohm resistors when I first bought his system, and I still have a bunch of them left. So that cost me nothing. And this other black spray that's electrically conductive stuff, that cost me maybe $20.
Okay.
And it's done my whole fleet of 450 cars.
There you go. Do you have a Facebook page for your railroad?
I haven't. Not a good one. No.
Okay.
I haven't updated it for a long time.
You should work on that, because we have a friend, Tom Jacobs, who I was totally against it, but he told me he was going to have a Facebook page, and I said, I don't think that's going to work. But he went ahead and did that. You know who Tom Jacobs is?
No.
Oh my goodness gracious! How can you imagine?
I live in Canada.
Yeah. Well, so do I.
Yeah.
Some of the time.
Yeah.
Permanently right now, because they won't let me out of the country, but that's long gone. And by now, if they haven't opened the border, I've driven to somewhere in Saskatchewan and driven across a farmer's field.
Yeah.
What's that?
I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, don't be telling.
Actually, when I lived in Montreal, there was a border crossing south of Montreal near the Dannemora prison.
Yeah.
And that was not always open, so you could just drive across the border. I did that a few times when I went down to Albany.
There you go. All right, so that's it. We're done. We're finished. Okay. Your job now is to go and back all the way and start listening to every single episode, especially yours. You should have you listened, at least listen to the ones Rob's been on?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. Rob is fantastic. What an artist.
Yeah, he is what a fantastic artist. But listen to some of the other ones, because they're better than the ones that Rob is on.
Yeah. No, Rob just weathered my Rapido diners and sent me the pictures today. So they're 100% as usual.
There you go. Rob is a wonderful artist, and he's always fretting that he's not getting enough business. And I keep telling him, stop worrying about that. People are going to find you.
He is super busy.
Yeah. Because as far as I'm concerned, their hobby's growing like crazy, and it's going to explode because of social media, and we're all going to be covered in model railroad goo.
Oh, good.
Yep. That's what I've learned from doing this. Have you ever read Model Railroader? Let's try that.
I have a subscription, yeah.
Okay. Did you used to read it back in the late 90s and early 2000s?
Yes, I remember a Lionel Strang being there.
Was February 94 your favorite issue of all time?
It must have been.
Oh, jeez.
He's sure trying to get compliments here.
Yeah. No, I'm just, yeah. All right, Bruce, can you give out our email address?
Certainly. Our email address, please send us emails. We'd love to hear from all our fans. I'll tell you one way, and then Lionel will tell you the other way. But you want to do the old-fashioned way, send us an email at Modler's Life, Modlers with one L, modlerslife@gmail.com.
Yeah, and we have, we can never stop doing that, Bruce. But we do have another way. If you go to our website, and you'll scroll down a little bit, and you'll see a picture of Bruce, the moderately agitated mailboy, in a particularly agitated state. And if you just click on that picture, boom, you'll automatically be able to send us an email and tell us all your thoughts and ideas about the podcast. And
what's our website?
And our website is amodelerslife.com. That's just modelerslife.com. And if you go there, you'll see you scroll down, you'll see something about our... did you know, Norm, that we have a complete library of how-to videos?
I did not.
Yes, we have a complete library of how-to videos that were made and edited, and they star a fellow named Ron Marsh.
Uh-huh.
And he was so kind to do all this for us. And if you go to Ron's Trains and Things, you'll see that there's this whole library of how-to videos. So go to Ron's Trains and Things on YouTube. And you'll see that on the website. You'll also see something. Click on a tab about Patreon. And if you love this podcast, which is free, but you want more, you click on Patreon. And for $5 a month, you can get 4 more podcasts every month.
Aha.
Yeah, 16 cents a day. So that's all it is.
That's good. Good thing I don't drink coffee.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and if I don't think Rob would get your stuff done if he didn't have them to listen to.
That's right.
Okay, so at the appropriate time, Norm, you're going to have to say happy rails to you.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, whenever I'm ready. Hey, Spoon, how did you like this? Are you glad you showed up?
Yeah, it's always nice to talk to, other guys in the industry, especially in different departments. From different departments. It's always interesting to get the other perspectives.
Yeah, not only is this podcast fun for you from a model railroading standpoint, now you've gotten to talk to guys, a retired guy that was, you guys had a great discussion. I was thinking, I was enjoying it immensely.
One of his nemesis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody is Spoon's nemesis.
Hey, I you know what? It's really funny because I've learned that all you have to do is kill them with kindness.
Yeah,
you just have to be nice to them, and they'll pretty much let you do anything you want.
I can just see the conductor sitting in the cab across from you, and you're going, "Hey, what do you think's in that car? Why do they have that car? They only got one of those cars last week. This week they're getting 2. Why do you think they're getting 2 cars?" And your conductor puts his coffee down and looks over at you and goes, "What?
Huh?"
Well, Norm, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
happy rails to you.
While in Busted Knuckle, guests of A Modeler's Life podcast stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late-night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.